Hello, thank you for joining. Happy Monday. Happy Monday post Thanksgiving. I'm sure if you're in the US, you're feeling a little bit like, okay, ready for a little routine again. I know I am. So super excited to kick off our Monday call with Lyndy, licensed clinical social worker. She partners with our team and does our monthly mental health calls. And she also has a practice in Utah, where she has multiple therapists. And do you specialize? Would you say you specialize, your clinic specializes in anything, or your practice does, or
Yeah, eating disorders, body image, and anxiety. We're actually building a specialty for OCD.
wow, that's really cool.
So
Yeah, so
yeah,
you can find her on Instagram at, okay, say it because I feel like I'm going to
mind and
butcher it.
strength.
Is it my mind and strength?
No, sorry, that's our email, and that's because mind and strength was taken. So it's just
Okay,
mind
I get
and
it mixed up.
strength.
Yes. So just at mind and strength.
Yeah,
And yeah, and we're gonna have her just to kick off our mental health call for November. So thanks for joining.
yeah.
We kind of combined. So we will maybe do one in December, but this is just our overarching holidays call.
Because it always happens and comes up prior to the actual holidays. So it's
Yeah.
always good to kind of talk about it at the beginning of December. Um, let's see. Do I have rights to share my oh app?
Oh,
I do. Oh no, it says disabled. Do you want to enable that?
yes, am. I'm not usually on my phone for these. Sorry, everyone. Let me always. I might need to make you the host.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Just hopefully not too many people want to. I'll make sure to check if people need to be admitted.
Yeah. If you want to, even if you want to make me the host again, here, let
Okay.
me see. After unless I can just allow you.
Or
No,
maybe
I
you can
think
just make me the
I
host
have
and
to
I
make you the host. Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah, I can make.
yes.
Oh, it
If
says
you want to
host.
make me the
Okay.
host back after, you can.
Sure.
Sorry, guys.
I sure
My
can.
controls are all in like different spots on my phone.
Oh, the fun. Okay, now, sorry guys. Okay, so, oh, darn, what did I do? There it is. Okay, so now I go back to participants, right?
Yeah.
And then,
And I can let people in as they join.
okay, Michaela, make host.
Hopefully that
Yes.
works. Okay. Oh, your screen went
Oh
away.
man, my screen went away. That's okay. I'll
Okay,
email it to
I'll
you
make you the
guys.
host. Okay, you let people in as they come.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone.
Okay. So, like I said, as a therapist, I always like talking. Uh yes, I like talking in general, but I always like talking to people about holidays because in my career I've worked mobile crisis in Oakland, I've worked in a hospital, I've worked residential, I've worked outpatient. So I've worked in a lot of different settings with a lot of different people, and the holidays always bring up different things for different people. It can bring up a lot of grief and loss. It can bring up excitement. It can bring up over busyness. It can bring up expectations. It can bring up anxiety, right? Like a lot of times we have this feeling that these are the myths that we have about holidays is that like everyone loves them, everyone looks forward to them. Of course, as I was scrolling like Facebook or Instagram, people are posting all about all the different things, and some have very, very elaborate traditions, some people not. But what I end up finding is then people that don't maybe fit that mold feel like something's wrong with them because they don't love the holidays, or they have these expectations of what the holiday should look like. And so I always like to talk about this, so that you can try to shape and understand what this season feels like for you, and how you can find joy, purpose, meaning, rest, calm, whatever it is you need at this time, right? But I like to bring up that like the holidays aren't always great for everyone. Um, and people, well, at least it tells me when someone's trying to get admitted. So that makes it easy. So like a lot of pressures happen. Like we were chatting this morning with one of my therapists about, oh, like, okay, our kids have this, there's that, right? Like we have to say yes to all these social engagements. I know that's something I very much have cut back and worked through over the last several years. So it's important to recognize like some of the expectations that come up during the holidays and ask yourself, is this what I want for me? Does it make me feel connected? Does it make it feel meaningful? Or is it just a checklist I have to do that makes me feel anxious all the time? Because I've had clients come in and go, I just can't wait till the holidays over. How quick can this be done? Can we just skip over? And then I have other people that are like, oh, this is the most amazing time of the year. And then there's other people that fall in between. So it's important to just think about what they are for you. Here's what's interesting is that 64% of people that have a mental illness, depression, anxiety, whatever, report holidays make their conditions worse. Now, there's a lot of compacting factors there. A lot of those things we just talked about, if you, depending on where in the country or world you are, changes in light, temperature. I'm a California girl at heart. Still don't like this cold weather in Utah. You know, I prefer the 45 degrees cold weather, but um, so it's a time that like in my field, we always see an increase in those depression, anxiety, and other symptoms. So that's something to like, one, be aware if you do struggle with depression, with anxiety, with seasonal affective disorder, is just know that this time for a lot of compounding factors is generally a time that we see an increase in those symptoms. And that's where, again, self-care, habits, routine, support systems become even more important. Is if you know and can prepare. More often than not, the reason I like having this conversation in early um December is because if I can help clients prepare for it, it doesn't prevent it, those difficulties from happening, but it builds, and I'm all about this, builds your resiliency and ability to adapt and deal with it. Did you have a
Well, and
comment, Michaela?
I think having that awareness can be helpful. Like this is a silly example, but when I'm, you know, every month, some worse than others, if I'm super emotional and just feeling like heightened sensitivity or frustration, or I'm just like short, and then my period starts the next day, and I'm like, oh, okay. But if you know, oh, I'm noticing I'm a little irritable, and I check my period cycle, and I'm like, my cycle's starting in a few days. This is like normal. And it doesn't mean the emotions are like I downplay them, but it's just helpful to know hormones are changing and that's going to impact my emotions. And just having that awareness doesn't make it makes me feel a little less crazy. But I think same goes for winter time. Like just knowing, not just being surprised by maybe you're feeling a little depressed or a little bit sad. You're likely not getting near as much sunlight. It's cold outside. You're probably inside more often. That sunlight is going to really benefit us, our health and wellness, but also like our mood. And so I think for me last year, just knowing, okay, this winter's coming, I need to get some good clothes so I can still get outside. And then also just be aware if I'm feeling a little bit more sad, like we're in that time of year. I got a red light last year. So when I was working, I could have that on me and that really helped my mood. Just like doing some things to support myself, knowing that I'm just going to struggle a little bit more than when it's summertime. With mood and energy and all of that, just because the temperatures are different, the hours of the day, like the sunlight hours are less. And so having awareness, but then also how can I support myself through this period so I do feel my best.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's why I like having these conversations so that we can prepare ourselves of how we can support ourselves. And also something we talked about when I did a training with a therapist that some of the newer therapists were like, oh, I hadn't thought about that, is an aftercare plan. If you know you're going to be in a situation that might be triggering, right? So like for me,
like with family or like gatherings. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, and you guys have heard me mention, if you've been with Hungry Fitness community long enough, like my dad died 3 years ago, and holidays always bring up stuff, partly because I grew up on a Christmas tree farm, a choose and cut Christmas tree farm. So there, there's a lot of grief and loss that comes up for me specifically during the holidays surrounding that. And so having the aftercare plan, right? Or like I'm thinking about actually ways I'm going to honor my dad, during this season. And grief and loss come up for a lot of people that have lost, loved ones. But having that aftercare, like I know Christmas Eve brings up a lot because it was a way we celebrated huge in my family growing up. So I have a plan already of like, how do I want to celebrate Christmas Eve so I can honor and not sit in that like sorrow, right? But let myself feel the sorrow, but also let me celebrate, So having an aftercare plan for when situations are going to be hard is also helpful too. Or like I've told my team, like, hey, don't schedule clients on the 26th of December because it's honestly, most people need a day of rest after Christmas.
Yeah.
So the aftercare for when situations might be triggering, but you can't maybe avoid the situation or want to is just as important as preparing for it. So
Yeah.
please, I was just going to say, please, if anyone has any specific things or, things that come up for you during the holiday that maybe you want some tips on, put them in the chat and I'm happy to answer any, questions or situations that you need help navigating. So sorry, Michaela, go ahead.
No, I think that's great. I know I'm always like, does anyone want to add in? Me and Henrietta are usually back and forth.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I saw something the other day about, sorry, there's a jet going overhead, but about as you are gathering with friends or family over this next month, to just take a moment in these situations and just like sit and ask yourself how you feel. Like, how do I feel in this setting? How do I feel with these people? Do they make me feel good? Do they make me feel triggered? Do they make me feel, bad? Like, just kind of check in with yourself and see how you're feeling. Because I think a lot of times we just kind of shove that down and we don't really listen to how we're feeling in group settings. And then I think we leave the group setting and we forget about it. And then we come back to that group setting again and we're like, oh, why did I schedule this gathering? Like, I don't feel good around these people. And so I think just checking in with yourself and then evaluating, like, can I spend maybe less time in this setting? Or maybe you're with extended family and you're with all your extended family and you realize you don't feel very good with all your extended family. Like, they revert back to kind of unhealthy toxic behaviors, but you feel really good with certain family members, like separately. And so maybe spending more time just like one-on-one with family members is better for you. Or just kind of evaluating and then realizing, like, if the holidays are unhappy for you, can you choose to spend time with people differently, or can you set some boundaries? Just because you've always done it a certain way, like you've always gathered with great grandma and all the cousins, and like, doesn't mean you have to. You can do your own thing this year with your, with yourself or with like your kids or whatever it is. You can always change how you do things to support yourself in this season.
I heard an interest. I was listening to the radio this morning. My husband had the radio on as we were getting ready for work for the day, and the news was like the word of the year. You know how is it Webster Dictionary? I don't know. Someone always declares the word of the year, and the word of the year was authentic. And I was like, oh yes.
I like that.
and and they were talking about in regards to like AI and different things. I was like, but we use that word all the time in mental health, and it's because again, going back to extended family. Sometimes we don't feel like we can be our authentic self or have permission, and that family, more social gatherings, most social pressure. One of the impacts, especially like one of my specialties is working with eating disorders, is not feeling like you can be authentic and those social situations where you feel pressured to conform to certain situations is really, really high for a lot of people. And people not wanting to rock the boat, people not wanting to cause conflict. And what I want you guys to think about beyond what Michaela just said is like, okay, if it's a situation where you can't avoid it, like, can you decrease the time? Or what are the emotional boundaries you can put up? And I kind of use that like armor analogy. Like, if you can't avoid it or you're choosing to appease, spouse, kids, whatever, to put yourself in a situation that maybe isn't your ideal scenario, what emotional boundaries or armor can you put up to protect yourself so that when you are able to leave that situation, that armor comes back down and that authentic side can come back out.
Yeah, I love that. What are some like examples that you have of that, of armoring yourself? Do you have any that kind of like clients will use or you've used?
So much of it is a mental mentality, like, because that's why I call it emotional boundaries or psychological boundaries, because like a misconception a lot of people get about boundaries is like, well, I set this boundary and they broke it. It's like, no, the boundary is to protect you. You have to enforce the boundary. I got to look up that book you were telling me about, Michaela. I haven't
Oh
looked it
yeah.
up
I think it
yet.
might be called Boundaries, but it's by Melissa Hartwig. I've been
Yeah.
studying it lately. It's good. She'll do a green boundary, a yellow boundary, or a red boundary. And so she gives examples of each. And I think
Hmm.
that's really helpful. Like here's a soft boundary, and then if they trample over that one, then you set a
Yeah.
more firm one, and then you have a really firm one. And so I think you can start with the red if you want to, but it's nice to be able to start with the green depending
Yeah.
on the scenario.
Yeah. Okay, so let me give you a quick scenario about food, exercise, or body image, since those are top issues that we see. And you guys work a lot, with people trying to find a good relationship with exercise, with food and with their body, right? Like, so some people, what we've done, especially for our clients with active eating disorder, we actually have them send an email out. Like if they're going to have an extended family gathering, they send an email out and say, please do not make any comments about my body, exercise, or food. Like they just try to set that firm boundary before you're even in that situation, that we will not be talking about what weight loss, weight gain, whatever comments about people's physical bodies, and try to shift the conversation more into what brings you joy. What hobbies do you enjoy? Again, a lot of our focus is helping people reconnect with their body in a way that brings them pleasure and joy, you know? So that's one thing that we do as of like a firm boundary. An emotional boundary will be one of the things I look at is have them like, hey, what are the things that you value? And then a lot of my clients were working on valuing more how you feel versus how you look and what other people think of you. So then we'll sit and talk about like, or you sit down with a journal prompt, whose relationships do I value at this family gathering? And then we set this emotional boundary of like, okay, so at this family gathering, you're going to go talk to so and so and ask them engaging questions. With so and so, you can exchange pleasantries and then walk away, right? Like, so then it's like you going in with like a mental plan of how you want to divvy up your time so you don't get sucked into like,
Mhm.
someone
I
used the
love
term.
that. Kind of
Yeah,
having a plan, like a social plan of where you feel either valued or safe and spending time there. I love
exactly.
And I think
Mhm.
I learned in therapy, which is so funny that it would hadn't occurred to me before, but in discussing certain topics, I my therapist was like, you can just say like, I don't want to discuss that right now. And you can say, I'd love to discuss that with you another time, or you
Mhm.
don't have to say that either if you don't want to discuss it another time. But just like her telling me that I could say, I don't want to discuss that topic right now. Like, I appreciate your concern or I can tell that you care or whatever it is. And you can just set that boundary out. And something about that was like so freeing to me. I think just because as kind of a perpetual people pleaser, I didn't know I could even do that. So, I think that's really helpful to know too. Like, you can just say, I'm not going to talk about that right now.
Yeah, and that's where some people even do it, like I said, like in the email prior, right?
Ahead
If
of
we
time,
know
for
they're
sure.
specific,
I think that's really nice because it can be
Mhm.
scary in the moment to do that. But just to know you
Exactly.
can do that in the moment if you need to, in a kind way too. Like, I don't think
Mhm.
now's the right time to discuss that, but maybe, I appreciate your concern and we can talk about it another time.
But part of putting up that armor along those same lines, Michaela, is knowing prior and mentally preparing yourself. Like, if they bring this up, I am going to say, I don't want to talk about that. And I don't
Yes,
need to apologize for that.
right.
So sometimes I'll have people write that down as like little affirmations, or prompts in their journal. Like, I don't need to apologize for it.
Hmm.
It's okay if this person doesn't value me or value what's important to me because maybe they're not on your list. So like part of that emotional like psychological boundary is mentally preparing yourself that to fight that people pleasing side of us, right? Like the don't rock the boat mentality a lot of us get into. So,
Yeah.
you know, and I'll be honest, you can ask my spouse. Especially because like, I don't know about you guys, but my family's like spread out in states. So like we don't get together very often. So I'll be honest, I am definitely more prone to avoid the conflict because I only have to deal with it once or twice a year. You
Yeah.
know? And it's something I'm having to work on. It's something my spouse has had to kind of help me see, but that avoiding it doesn't really, just because I only have to deal with it every once in a while, isn't the right approach. So some of you might be in similar situations where it's like, is it worth it? You know, and you have to really evaluate yourself if it's worth it. So I mean, we've talked a lot about family relationships, body image stuff comes up a lot. And then as we get closer to the new year, we will be bombarded with anything and everything. And I think Michaela and her team are so great at helping you guys navigate that. I know they've helped me. You know, I was just before you guys all logged on, I was telling Michaela and Henrietta how this cycle, I've really been able to break through some mental stuff and really start pushing and enjoying the bodybuilding in a way I haven't before. So they're great at
New
helping you
cycle is
guys navigate
today.
that. I know I didn't make it to the gym this morning, so it's on my to-do list for tonight while my girls are at gymnastics.
Yes, I love it.
So, um, so this are like grief and loss is definitely something that comes up. And like I said, it is, you know, and then sometimes creeps up in you and people don't realize it, you know. So if it is something, I'd encourage you to think about it, talk to some people about it, because the more, if it is something for you, the more you just try to ignore it, it will come out. And it's okay to acknowledge that this becomes a hard time of year if you've gone through grief and loss, you know, and finding a way to honor it during the holidays really can help bring some peace and comfort during those situations. So it is one of the biggest things that tends to come up with my clients, and not just the actual literal loss of a loved one. It can be the loss of relationships. It can be the loss and grief of things not turning out the way we expected, or, you know, financial strain, or, you know, it's not just the loss of a loved one, which is a big piece, but a lot of the times it's also grief and loss of expectations or unmet needs or strained family relationships, you know, all those different things. So it is important to acknowledge when that comes up. These are some ways to adjust is to, again, I love journals. I love journal prompts. I think it's such an effective way to process things. That self-care routine and staying into a routine during this season, even if it has to adjust a little bit, will help you as you go through all those things. And then finding meaning and purpose. Um, one way is there's a smash ornament where you can like smash a bunch of things and make an ornament that kind of like represents the shattering and the loss. Can be like an expressive way. Making a wreath that represents those losses, you know, but also then you make something beautiful out of something broken is kind of that idea, you know. And again, this can be about like a specific person, but it can also be about so much more than that. So if grief and loss comes up for you a lot during the holidays, I would think about what outlet artistically might help you process and find some healing in that loss. So, and then the last thing is to think about what does bring you joy and what ways can you connect and celebrate that make you feel connected to yourself and to others. Because I think regardless of what holidays mean to you, it is an opportunity to kind of reflect on the year, like a lot of people like to do, prepare for the new year, but also realize this isn't a time you just have to endure and get by. Think about ways you can celebrate yourself and celebrate how to connect with yourself and the ones that those relationships that are meaningful for you. Um, there's one more. Okay. So, and self-compassion, there's one more that I want to make sure I show you guys. Okay. This is one of my favorite prompts. And this is, like I said, I love journaling. So, what are my emotions and feelings going into the holidays? Like Michaela said, oftentimes we don't even recognize it. We just go, 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 go. So we don't even ask, you know? So I really like to have you sit down and think about, how do I really feel about it? What are my emotions? What physical sensations do I come up, right? Because a lot of clients will immediately start to feel that anxiety and those body like sensations that come up with emotion. So I really like to help you get in touch with those so that you can be a little bit more in tune and a little bit more intentional with how you plan out your time mentally, physically, emotionally, all those things. Ask yourself, what am I looking forward to? Is there anything you're looking forward to? What expectations do I have? I think a lot of times we have these expectations, and then when they don't get met, that's when disappointment, anger, resentment, all those things come up. What anxieties come up? How do I want to connect with others this holiday season? And what boundaries am I setting for myself and others? So, we talked a little bit about boundaries. Boundaries are super important, but remember, it's about what can I do to protect myself, you know, versus how I expect other people to behave. You can make requests, but if then they don't honor that, then it's up to you to, okay, then I'm not going to the next gathering. A boundary might be, hey, I'm not going to say yes to all the social engagements. I'm not going to I gave up on doing neighborhood gifts a long time ago. So
Yeah. I feel like it was so nice too to realize, like, with the holidays, oh, other people do Elf on the Shelf and they love that, or Christmas cards, or yeah, neighbor gifts, or whatever it is. And it's like, well, wait, what do I want to do? And maybe I love neighbor gifts. Maybe that like makes me so happy. Or maybe it doesn't and I don't do them and I just tell my neighbors Merry Christmas. Like, figure out what brings you joy and do it your way. Cause then it doesn't feel so stressful because you're just
mhm.
doing the things that you like. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I fully agree with that. Don't need to check off all the things. Some people like to, and good for them,
Yes.
if
So
that
those
makes
are
them
a
happy.
couple of my tips, right? Is think about what you're going into, boundaries, and think about them on the psychological and emotional end, right? Of what armor can you put up? Have a self-care routine and decide, what you can say no to. And again, I like to have you think about and focus what brings me joy this time of year and how do I focus more on that versus everybody else's expectations.
Yeah,
Mm.
and I will say too, like taking care of your core needs just with along with that, like, okay, do I want to maintain my workout routine and the foods that make me feel energized and good? Because I think it can be really easy to, oh, family's in town, I'll skip all my workouts and go do whatever the activity is, and then you feel tired and drained and disappointed, or what all the emotions that go along with that. Like, just saying like, hey, I need a couple hours in the morning and then I'll meet up with you guys after. And just keeping somewhat of a routine through this season, I think keeps you feeling grounded, but also just keeps you connected to the things that you're working on. And I think that helps a lot too. And it doesn't need to, maybe instead of an hour workout, you're doing a 20-minute workout, right? It can all be adjusted, but like checking those boxes of what that self-care looks like for you and deciding, can I go 100% here or can I give 60%? So I can still check that box and like make sure I'm feeling good in this season. That's more stressful in most, for most people.
Yeah.
I think also that sometimes we think that people have expectations of us, but maybe they don't. Like maybe it's that in our head, like that we like this is the
Absolutely.
expectation, but who has said that it is? So sometimes also like expressing what you want and what you feel might not be as scary as you think because the expectations might not be what you think they are.
And then to build off of that, it might be scary, but again, what's best for me? I think so often, especially when we're working through perfectionism and people pleasing, is that, you know, I can't control how they react and how they feel. What matters the most is how it impacts me, and it's so hard because I'm not saying we should all be selfish and never do anything for other people. But like you said, like, hey, we might think they have these expectations and so much we build up these stories in our head and they're not really what's going on. But if sometimes, Henrietta, what I do is when people are scared to share, it's like, does what they think and feel really matter? And if I can get them recentered on how I think it feel really matters, then it eases up that anxiety and fear about speaking up, because it's like, hey, how they react doesn't really matter because this is what works for me. And then they can either
Absolutely.
like, oh, be
Respect
pleasantly
that.
surprised, or if they still have a bad reaction, go, well, that's what I expected, but I know how to handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And hopefully it's like an opportunity for connection. Because you can have some vulnerability and, you know, say something doesn't work for you or whatever. And it's an opportunity to like, oh, well, what's going on? Like, you know, and I think our loved ones do want us to be happy and well. And so if I know like me inviting you to this gathering is stressing you out, I want to know like, oh yeah, take care of yourself. I want you to be doing well right now. You don't need to come or whatever it is, you know? So I think just yeah, trusting yourself and knowing that you know what's best for you.
Yeah.
Mm.
Awesome.
So
All right,
thank
Michaela.
you so much. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining, everyone.
All
And
right.
we'll see you guys next week. Have a great Monday.
Bye.
Thank you.